Her only son tossed her suitcase into the mud, then left her on the side of the road. Gloria Patterson, a retired librarian and widowed mother, didn't cry. By the end of the week, she had erased him from her house title, her will, and every account he once called ours. She raised him with patience. He repaid her with abandonment. Now, when he comes knocking, the documents answer louder than she ever did. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The highway unspooled in a long gray ribbon ahead, the late spring sky low and bruised. Gloria Patterson sat in the back seat, her hands folded over a canvas purse that held every document she'd ever trusted her son with. Up front, Lucas gripped the steering wheel like it had wronged him, his jaw tight, a muscle ticking just below his ear. Danielle's perfume floated through the car, sharp, citrusy, deliberate. "Can we stop for a restroom soon?" Gloria asked, soft but steady. Lucas didn't look back. "You said that 20 minutes ago, Mom." Danielle smirked faintly toward the window. "Maybe she just likes the attention, honey." The words slid under Gloria's skin like cold wire. She stared out at the passing fence posts, each one a flicker of time she couldn't get back. The sound of the tires on the asphalt filled the silence she refused to break. When the car jerked to the right shoulder, gravel spitting beneath the tires, Gloria's fingers tightened around her purse. Lucas threw it in park, exhaling hard. "Fine, you want to stop?" "Stop." He popped the trunk and climbed out before she could answer. The slam of his door made a crow lift off a nearby fence post. Danielle didn't move. She simply scrolled her phone. Gloria opened her door slowly, the wind slapping her hair against her face. She could smell rain coming, the heavy, metallic kind that made the air taste like pennies. Her son yanked her suitcase from the trunk and tossed it down. It hit the gravel with a dull thud, then burst open on the muddy edge of the shoulder. A lifetime of folded cardigans, old paperbacks, and small bottles of lavender lotion scattered like they'd never mattered at all. Lucas brushed his hands off. "You happy now?" Gloria looked at the mess, at her white nightgown soaking in a small puddle, and something inside her went still. "I didn't ask you to do that," she said quietly. "Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought about that before dragging us all over creation," he snapped, glancing back at Danielle. "She's impossible." Danielle sighed dramatically. "We're going to be late, Lucas." He threw up his hands, slid back behind the wheel, and started the engine. "Then let's go." For a moment, Gloria just stood there, rain beginning to sprinkle across her cheeks. The taillights blinked red against the gray horizon. Her heart thudded once, twice, then steadied. She bent, slowly, gathering what she could. The damp sweaters, the dented hairbrush, the paperback swollen with water. Each item was heavier than it should have been, as if the years themselves had decided to cling to her. The car pulled back onto the road, spitting gravel, and disappeared over the hill. She straightened, suitcase half-zipped and streaked with mud. A truck roared past, wind slapping her skirt against her legs. She didn't wave. The world went quiet except for the patter of rain and the faint hum of cicadas somewhere in the grass. Gloria looked down at the torn luggage tag, Patterson G., and felt the name sink deeper than the mud beneath her shoes. For 68 years she'd carried that name like a duty. Widow, mother, constant. She'd raised him through scraped knees and bad report cards, through every sullen silence when the world disappointed him. She had believed, truly believed, that patience could undo bitterness. But the suitcase lying open on the roadside told her otherwise. She dragged it off the shoulder, the wheels leaving 2 dark tracks in the wet gravel. The nearest sign read, "Exit 12. Tate's Creek Road." She knew exactly where she was. Lexington wasn't big enough for a person to get lost in, not if they remembered the streets the way she did. A semi hissed by, spraying mist across her coat. Gloria turned away from the road and began walking toward the faint glow of a gas station sign a mile down. Her shoes squelched with every step, but her stride didn't falter. When she reached the edge of the pavement, she paused, glancing once more at the hill where the car had vanished. Her chest ached, not from the walk, not from age, but from the finality that settled in. The rain fell harder, drumming on the suitcase handle. She whispered to no one, "You shouldn't have touched it, Lucas." Lightning flashed somewhere far off, illuminating her standing figure, soaked but upright, a small silhouette against the wide Kentucky plain. In that brief flicker of light, the decision that would unravel everything took root. Not loud, not bitter, just absolute. She turned toward town, her reflection rippling in every puddle she passed. And as thunder rolled across the horizon, Gloria Patterson, former librarian, quiet mother, quiet no more, walked away from the road where her son had left her, clutching the handle of a ruined suitcase that would soon be the least of what he lost. The gas station lights hummed faintly against the curtain of rain, casting a pale halo over the cracked asphalt. Gloria Patterson stood beneath the overhang, the scent of gasoline mingling with wet earth. Her shoes left small prints on the concrete as she leaned against the payphone mounted to the wall, an antique relic she hadn't used in decades. But somehow, it felt right. She slipped a damp quarter into the slot and dialed from memory. The ringback tone stretched thin through the static until a familiar voice cut through. "Gloria, you, all right?" Helen Brigg always had that voice, roughened by coffee, softened by loyalty. Gloria exhaled, her breath visible in the cool night air. "Can you come get me?" "Where are you, hun?" "Tate's Creek Road. Gas station by the exit. He left me out here." There was no hesitation. "On my way." Gloria hung up and watched the rain hit the pavement, the drops splintering in the glow of the flickering fluorescent light. Inside, a teenage clerk glanced her way once, then went back to his phone. She didn't mind. Some people didn't know how to look at a person mid-betrayal. When Helen's old blue Subaru rolled in 20 minutes later, the wipers squeaked across the windshield, struggling to keep pace with the storm. Gloria tucked her wet suitcase into the back seat and climbed in. The heater was on, and Helen handed her a towel that smelled faintly of detergent and peppermint. Neither spoke as they pulled onto the highway. The road shimmered black, streetlights reflecting in long ribbons across the puddles. Helen's hand stayed steady on the wheel, but her head shook, slow and deliberate. "That boy," she finally said, low. "I knew he had a temper. But this? Leaving you out there?" Gloria stared out the window, watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass. "It wasn't the rain that bothered me," she said softly. "It was the look on his face when he did it. Like he'd been waiting for a reason." Helen's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "You raised him better." "I thought I did." The car's interior filled with the steady rhythm of rain against metal, punctuated by the hum of the tires slicing through shallow water. Street signs blurred past, Mano War Boulevard, Nicholasville Road, familiar markers that used to mean home, now just coordinates in a map of disappointment. When they turned onto Chestnut Avenue, the world grew stiller. The rain eased into a mist. Porch lights glowed behind trimmed hedges, every house holding a quiet story behind closed curtains. Helen parked by Gloria's two-bedroom brick home, the little place that smelled like lemon oil and peace. Or used to. "I can stay the night," Helen offered. Gloria shook her head. "No need. I've got things to think through." They carried the muddy suitcase up the steps together. The motion light above the door flickered on, catching the fine lines of fatigue around Gloria's eyes. Inside, the warmth of the house hit her immediately, the faint scent of old paper, the ticking of the grandfather clock, the hum of the fridge. Helen lingered in the doorway, watching Gloria move through her kitchen like someone retracing a dream. Gloria filled the kettle, her hands steady but deliberate. "You sure you're all right?" Helen asked again. Gloria nodded once. "He's still on the title, isn't he?" Helen's lips pressed into a line. "You never took him off after the surgery?" "No. I thought it was smart, in case something happened." She poured the hot water into her favorite chipped mug, the one with a faded bluebird on the side. Steam curled upward, fogging her glasses. "Something did happen. Just not to me." Helen leaned against the counter, watching her friend with eyes that had seen too much over the years. "What are you gonna do?" Gloria set the mug down and reached into her purse. From it, she pulled a thick folder, neatly labeled in black marker, "Property." The edges were worn, the corners bent, but the spine held strong. She placed it flat on the kitchen table next to a small vase of wilted tulips. The petals had begun to curl inward, collapsing quietly, as if retreating from light. "I'm going to finish the drive he didn't," Gloria said. Her voice was calm, but beneath it was steel. "All the way to the end." Helen opened her mouth to reply, but Gloria's expression stopped her. That new stillness in her friend's eyes, colder than she'd ever seen. Outside, thunder rolled again over Lexington, low and deliberate, echoing through the damp air. Helen swallowed. "You call me if you need anything, you hear?" Gloria managed a small nod. "I already did." Helen stepped out into the mist, pulling her coat tight as she crossed the yard. The taillights of her Subaru faded down the street until the night swallowed them whole. Inside, Gloria sat at the table, fingertips resting on the folder. She didn't open it yet. The clock ticked. Somewhere beyond the glass, water dripped rhythmically from the eaves. She finally whispered, to no one at all, "He thinks he left me behind." Her hand closed over the folder. Morning light slid across the blinds, thin and cold. Gloria Patterson hadn't slept much. The tea from the night before still sat half-finished on the table beside the folder marked "Property," its edges warped slightly from the steam. She sat there for a long while, watching dust drift through the sunlight, the quiet hum of her refrigerator filling the silence that her son's absence had left behind. By 10 a.m., she'd showered, pressed her best gray slacks, and tied her hair back with the same barrette she used for library shifts decades ago. Small, efficient, no nonsense. The storm had cleared, but the streets still glistened, puddles reflecting the overcast sky as she drove her old Buick downtown. Carla Jameson's office sat in a narrow brick building off Limestone Street, wedged between a tax service and a florist. Gloria remembered the place from years ago, back when she and her husband had drawn up their first will. The brass nameplate by the door read, "C. Jameson, Attorney at Law," the letters slightly dulled by rain and time. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. The receptionist, a young man with a bow tie and nervous smile, looked up. "Good morning, Ms. Patterson. She's expecting you." Gloria nodded politely, clutching her folder like a shield. Carla emerged from her office, tall, in a charcoal suit that didn't try too hard. Her hair was short now, sharper, tidier than Gloria remembered. "Well, look at you," she said, ushering her inside. "Haven't seen you since your husband's estate wrapped up. Sit down, let's take a look at what's bothering you." Gloria sat, the chair creaking softly beneath her. She slid the folder across the desk without a word. Carla opened it, flipping through a stack of papers neatly tabbed and annotated in Gloria's careful handwriting. "Quitclaim deed," Carla murmured, scanning the lines. "Joint tenancy? Added in 2017, after your heart surgery, right?" Gloria nodded once. "The doctor said I might not make it. I wanted to make sure the house stayed in the family." Carla looked up, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "And now?" "Now I'm making sure it doesn't leave it the wrong way." Carla's brow lifted, a hint of respect passing between them. She reached for a pen, circling a line of text near the bottom of the form. Here's the part that matters. You added him, but you never filed a survivorship clause. That means it's revocable. By you, and only you. Gloria's pulse steadied. So I can remove him. You can do more than that, Carla said, leaning back in her chair. You can reassert sole ownership. No one to contest. No consent required. Gloria folded her hands on the desk. He doesn't deserve to hold what he didn't earn. Carla smiled faintly, a lawyer's smile that knew when to keep quiet. You'd be surprised how often I hear that, but rarely with that much conviction. I spent 40 years saving for that house, Gloria said, her voice even. Every month, I brought home my check from the library, packed lunch from leftovers, refinished my own floors. He never lifted a hand for it. He only started caring when he saw value in it. Carla marked a few lines with her pen, methodical and calm. We'll need your signature on these updated documents, and then I'll file the transfer at the county office. It'll take about 10 business days for the record to reflect. Once that happens, he's off, Gloria finished. Carla's eyes softened. You're the sole owner, Gloria. He just doesn't know it yet. For the first time that morning, Gloria smiled. Not a bitter one, not even satisfied. Just quiet. It was the kind of smile that came when something inside finally clicked into place. Carla stood, gathering the papers. I'll handle the paperwork personally. You go home, rest, maybe bake something. And don't tell him a word until you've got the finalized copy in hand. Gloria rose, smoothing her coat. He won't hear it from me. At the door, Carla paused. You're stronger than most of the clients who sit in that chair. I've had practice, Gloria replied, her hand on the doorknob. Outside, Lexington had brightened. The sidewalk steamed where the sun broke through, and the courthouse dome gleamed faintly in the distance. Gloria stepped onto the curb and inhaled deeply, the air sharp with the scent of thawed rain and early spring. She clutched the folder to her chest as she crossed to her car. In the reflection of her windshield, she caught her own eyes, steady, clear, unflinching. As she unlocked the door, her phone buzzed in her purse. A message from Lucas lit up the screen. We need to talk about the house. Gloria looked at it for a long moment, then turned the phone face down on the seat. The next morning dawned crisp and windless, the kind of Kentucky spring day that pretends to be gentle. Gloria Patterson stood on her porch, coat buttoned, folder tucked neatly under her arm. The tulips Helen had planted last year were beginning to bloom along the walkway, bright, oblivious, almost defiant. She locked the front door behind her, hearing the solid click of the deadbolt. It sounded final, like punctuation. The DMV Title Division sat in a low government building across from the courthouse. Beige walls, glass doors, a flag out front that whipped softly in the breeze. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of wasps. The air smelled faintly of copier ink and burnt coffee. A handful of people waited in plastic chairs, a young couple arguing over paperwork, a teenager tapping nervously on his phone, a delivery driver chewing on a pen cap. Gloria joined the line, folder pressed close to her chest, every minute a small test of patience she'd honed over a lifetime. When she finally reached the counter, she saw him. Trevor Lynn, the same DMV title officer who'd helped her with her husband's estate 12 years ago. His hair had gone whiter, his posture a little slower, but his eyes were still sharp behind his square glasses. Ms. Patterson, he said, smiling wide, still got that little house on Chestnut? Gloria smiled back, polite but restrained. I do. That's what brings me here, actually. He motioned for her to step closer, lowering his voice like he was greeting an old friend in church. Well, it's good to see a familiar face in this place. What can I do for you? Gloria slid the folder across the counter, opening it to the top sheet Carla had marked with a paperclip. "Quitclaim documents," she said, "prepared by my attorney." Trevor took the papers carefully, glancing down at the names. His lips moved slightly as he read, then his brow lifted. "Removing a joint owner?" "Yes." He flipped to the signature section, scanning for the second name. There wasn't one. His eyebrows drew together. Not confused, exactly, but intrigued. "Carla Jameson did these," Gloria added. "You might remember her. Firm downtown, sharp as a tack." "Oh, I remember Carla." He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "She doesn't miss a comma." The printer near the wall hummed, spitting out some other customer's form, but for a moment it felt like the whole office had gone quiet. Trevor tapped a finger on the deed. "He's not gonna like this, Ms. Patterson." Gloria's tone was calm, measured, almost kind. "He doesn't have to." That gave him pause. He looked up, really looked at her, and whatever warmth had softened his face a moment ago now gave way to something closer to respect. "Well," he said after a beat, "your documentation's in order." Carla made sure of that. "I'll process it today. Get it entered in the county system. Once the verification comes through, this'll be official. Sole ownership." Gloria nodded once. "That'll be fine." He started typing, fingers clicking softly across the keyboard. "Want me to mail the finalized title to your address on file?" "Yes," she said, then hesitated. "No, I'll pick it up myself." Trevor glanced up, smiling slightly. "All right, I'll hold it at the desk for you." Behind them, the line shuffled forward. A toddler began crying somewhere near the licensing window. Gloria watched as Trevor stamped the form, his motions methodical, certain, the kind of certainty she hadn't felt in a long time. "There you go," he said, sliding her copy back through the window. "This'll take a few days to show in the record, but once it's logged, there's no undoing it without your say-so." "No undoing," she repeated softly. "That's exactly what I want." Trevor gave her a long, knowing look. "I'm guessing this isn't just paperwork." Gloria smiled faintly. "No, Trevor, it's principle." She turned toward the door, the folder tucked neatly beneath her arm again. As she stepped outside, the sunlight hit her face. Bright, unfiltered, almost too honest. The courthouse bell struck 11, echoing across the square. A breeze lifted her hair as she walked to her car, the sound of flags snapping above her. She slid behind the wheel, laid the folder on the passenger seat, and rested her hand on it for a long moment. Her pulse had steadied into something cool and deliberate. Across the street, a man in a gray sedan parked and lowered his window. For a second, she could have sworn she recognized the shape of his profile. Lucas's squared jaw, his restless movement. But when she blinked, he was gone. Or maybe he'd never been there at all. Either way, she didn't look again. Gloria turned the key, the Buick rumbling to life. She merged onto Main Street, calm but alert. The city rolling past, courthouse, bakery, florist, each window flashing sunlight like small, quiet approvals. When she reached the first red light, she glanced at the stamped copy of her form on the seat beside her. The black ink gleamed wet under the sun. By Sunday morning, Lexington had settled into that quiet lull that always came before noon church bells. The air smelled faintly of wet grass and honeysuckle. Gloria Patterson sat on her porch, with a mug of coffee cooling in her hands, the faint hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. She'd slept better the last few nights. The quitclaim filing sat safely in her folder on the hall table, and Trevor had called Friday to confirm everything was moving right along. Those were his exact words. Steady, procedural, like clockwork. For Gloria, that rhythm felt like justice humming through the pipes of her own house. She didn't expect the sound of tires crunching up her driveway. Lucas's black SUV pulled in crooked, one tire catching the edge of her lawn. He climbed out wearing a smile that didn't belong to him. Wide, shiny, performative. Danielle wasn't with him, but Gloria could smell her perfume faintly on his jacket even from the porch. "Hey, Mom," Lucas called, already grabbing a ladder from the back of the car. "Figured I'd help you with that gutter you mentioned last month. You said it was sagging." Gloria raised an eyebrow over her coffee cup. "I said it was fine." "Yeah, well, you know me. Can't sit still." He gave a short laugh, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Just trying to make myself useful around here." He didn't wait for permission. Within minutes, he was climbing up, wrench in hand, the metal creaking as he adjusted the screws that didn't need adjusting. Gloria watched him through the steam rising from her mug. Her pulse stayed calm. "You don't need to fuss over it," she said. "I like helping," he replied, forcing a grin down at her. "Besides, someone's got to keep this place in shape if I'm going to end up maintaining it one day." The statement hung in the air like humidity. Gloria didn't answer. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. A message from Danielle. "Hope you're keeping the house warm for us." Gloria read it twice. Then she set the phone face down, took another sip of her coffee, and stared out at the neighbor's maple tree instead. Lucas climbed down the ladder, wiping his hands on a rag. "There, good as new." "Wasn't broken," she said softly. He chuckled. "Well, no harm in looking after what'll be ours, right?" Her eyes flicked toward him, then away. "You mean mine?" "Sure, Mom. Ours, yours. Same thing." He stepped onto the porch, sweat darkening the collar of his t-shirt. "Hey, I've been thinking maybe next year I could put a small shed in the back. Nothing crazy, just a spot for tools. Danielle's been eyeing those prefab ones from Lowe's." Gloria's fingers tightened around her mug. The tulips at the edge of the porch caught a gust of wind, their red petals shivering. She looked at her son, really looked. The restless tapping of his fingers, the fake casual tone, the way his gaze drifted to the front door like he already owned the key. For 40 years she'd made excuses for him. Told herself his anger came from stress, his greed from insecurity. But in that moment, she saw it. Key plain, the calculation in his eyes, the same look he'd worn when he tossed her suitcase into the mud. She set the mug down carefully on the porch railing. "You won't be living here next year," she said. The words came out steady, almost gentle, but they landed heavy. Lucas blinked, a half smile still frozen on his face. "What?" "I said," Gloria repeated, her voice firmer now. "You won't be living here next year. Or any year after that." He laughed once, too loud. "That's funny." "I'm not joking." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the sound of a lawnmower 3 houses down. A blue jay landed on the railing, then darted off again, sensing the tension. Lucas's grin faltered. "You're serious?" Gloria didn't move. "I'm serious." He took a step back, his hand twitching at his side. "You can't just... I mean, it's on the title." "Not anymore." Her tone was soft as a gavel. Lucas stared at her, the color draining from his face as if her words had drawn the heat straight out of him. "What did you do?" "Something you should have done years ago," she said. "Earn it." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The sound of the wind picked up, scattering the leaves across the driveway. From inside the house, the grandfather clock began to chime. Gloria stood, smoothing the front of her cardigan, and gave him the faintest nod toward the gutter he'd just tightened. "Good work up there," she said. "That's the last thing you'll ever fix on this house." She turned and walked inside, leaving the door open just long enough for him to hear the lock slide into place behind her. Lucas stood on the porch, staring at the tulips trembling in the breeze, the ladder still leaning against the siding, a job finished for a home that no longer belonged to him. The next morning broke with a hard, bright light. the kind that made everything look sharper than it was. Gloria Patterson was halfway through her second cup of coffee when she heard tires screech against the curb out front. Danielle Patterson's silver Lexus came to a stop at an angle, her heels clicking before the engine even finished turning off. She didn't bother to shut the door all the way. Gloria stayed where she was, in her kitchen, standing at the sink, watching the scene unfold through the window like a matinee she hadn't bought tickets for. Danielle's voice arrived before she did. "Gloria." The front screen door rattled a moment later. "Gloria Patterson, you promised this house would be Lucas's." Danielle's voice was tight, pitched higher than usual, the kind of tone that tried to sound composed but couldn't hide the panic underneath. Gloria wiped her hands on a dish towel and stepped into the doorway, calm as a librarian silencing a noisy reader. "I promise nothing," she said. Danielle blinked, incredulous. Her lipstick was perfect, but her expression wasn't. He told me, he told me, this house was his future. He said it was in both your names." "It was," Gloria said. "Past tense." Danielle took a step forward, her heels sinking slightly into the old porch boards. "You can't just take it away." Gloria tilted her head slightly, studying the woman who had treated her like an obstacle for years. "If he thought ownership meant entitlement," she said softly, "then he learned that from you." For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the faint whir of the ceiling fan and the steady tick of the clock in the hallway. Danielle's phone buzzed in her hand. She ignored it. "You're being cruel," she said. "You know how hard it's been for us. How much he's struggled. You said you'd look out for him." "I did," Gloria replied. "For 40 years. Something flickered behind Danielle's eyes. Recognition, maybe shame, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You're making a mistake. We could have helped you. The upkeep alone on this place." Gloria turned toward the counter, pouring herself another half cup of coffee unhurried. "I've managed fine so far." Danielle's jaw tensed. "You think this is fair?" "No," Gloria said, turning back to her. "It's right." Danielle's hand trembled slightly as she reached into her purse, pulling out her phone. "You'll regret this," she muttered, typing furiously. "You have no idea what kind of mess you're making." Before Gloria could respond, her own phone buzzed from the kitchen table. The name on the screen, Carla Jameson. Gloria lifted the phone, meeting Danielle's glare with quiet poise. "Excuse me," she answered. "Morning, Carla." "Morning, Gloria," came the crisp, businesslike voice. "Good news, the title's finalized, filed, recorded, and mailed out yesterday. You should see it any day now." Gloria's eyes didn't leave Danielle's face. "Thank you, Carla. That's just what I needed to hear." Danielle's complexion drained of color as if the words had reached her through osmosis. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. "Yes," Gloria added into the phone, her tone deliberate. "That means it's official. Sole ownership." Danielle's voice cracked, small and brittle. "You went through with it." Gloria ended the call and set the phone down gently, like placing a final stone on a grave. "I did." Danielle's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wet, but not from sorrow, from disbelief. How could you do that to your own son?" "I didn't do it to him," Gloria said. "I did it for me." Outside, the sound of a screen door creaking open floated through the air. Helen Briggs stepped onto her porch next door, mug in hand, wearing a robe and the satisfied grin of someone who'd been expecting this exact show. "Morning, ladies," Helen called, voice dripping with amusement. Danielle shot her a glare that could have stripped paint. Helen just raised her mug in salute. Gloria looked back at Danielle. "You should go before you embarrass yourself further." Danielle laughed, a hard, bitter sound. "You think this is over? You think a few signatures make you untouchable?" Gloria's expression didn't shift. No, she said. They make me free. Danielle's jaw clenched. She turned sharply, her heels stabbing into the gravel as she marched down the porch steps. She yanked the car door open and slammed it so hard the glass rattled. Helen watched as the Lexus peeled out, tires spitting dust down Chestnut Avenue. Then, slowly, she looked over at Gloria. "Well," she said, sipping her coffee. "That went about how I figured." Gloria managed the smallest smile. She always did overestimate her charm. Helen chuckled. "And underestimate yours." They stood there in companionable silence for a moment. Two women who'd seen enough storms to know when the air was about to clear. Gloria's phone buzzed again on the counter. Another message. This one from Lucas. "You'll pay for this. Both of you will." Her smile faded, but only slightly. She turned the phone off, slipped it into a drawer, and looked out the window toward Helen's porch. Helen raised her mug again, eyes narrowing as if to say, "I saw that." The next few days unrolled with the quiet steadiness of late spring. Birds in the eaves, tulips in full bloom, and the smell of cut grass drifting through open windows. Gloria Patterson spent her mornings as she always had, feeding the cat that wasn't really hers, watering the flower beds, and reading the paper front to back with her coffee. But by Thursday, even her stillness wasn't enough to keep the noise out. Helen was the first to mention it. She appeared on the porch rail between their houses, robe-belted, phone in hand. "He's at it on Facebook again," she said. Gloria didn't look up from pruning her roses. "Who?" "Who do you think?" Helen muttered. "Your boy. Made a post an hour ago. I shouldn't have looked, but... well, you know me." Gloria sighed. "What did he say this time?" Helen scrolled, lips tightening. Some parents forget who raised who. She looked over her glasses. Real poet, that one. Gloria's shears clicked once, sharp and clean. "Sounds about right." Helen tilted her phone toward her, squinting again. "And there's Danielle, right under it. Comment says, 'Unbelievable betrayal,' then a broken heart emoji, like she's auditioning for daytime TV." Gloria took a step back from her garden, looking over the bed of tulips she and Helen had planted last year. Reds, yellows, and a single stubborn white one that came up on its own. The blossoms swayed lightly in the breeze, unbothered by anything human. She dusted her gloves together. "I suppose they need an audience. It's easier to type than to think." Helen huffed. "If I were you, I'd say something. A post, a line, something that'd make them choke on their own coffee." Gloria smiled faintly, a spark of mischief beneath her calm. "Maybe I will." Later that afternoon, she set her phone on the kitchen counter and framed the shot, sunlight spilling across the tulips, the edges of her freshly painted porch in view. The colors glowed, bright and defiant. She typed the caption slowly, deliberately. "Nothing dead grows here." She hit post without another word. Across the street, Helen's laugh burst out loud enough to startle the mail carrier. She nearly dropped her glass of iced tea, leaning against the porch column for balance. "Oh, Gloria Patterson," she called out between laughs. "You just lit a bonfire with 6 words." Gloria smiled, setting the phone down. Sometimes that's all it takes. By evening, her post had a quiet ripple of likes, mostly neighbors and a few old library co-workers. No drama, no argument, just silent approval from those who knew better than to ask questions. Lucas's post, meanwhile, had grown into a small storm of pity comments. Distant relatives, friends from high school, even a few strangers tossing in their half-baked opinions. Gloria didn't scroll. She didn't need to. She'd already won the part that mattered. The sun dipped low, streaking the kitchen with amber light. She brewed a small pot of tea, her ritual of calm, and settled into the armchair near the window. From next door, Helen waved through the screen, still chuckling to herself. Just as Gloria reached for her cup, the phone rang. She recognized the number immediately. Trevor Lynn, DMV Title Division. She answered, warm but reserved. Afternoon, Trevor. Well now, his voice came through, friendly and familiar. I've got something shiny with your name on it. Literally. The finalized title came back today, embossed and everything. You want it framed? I've got a guy here who does it for retirees all the time. Gloria smiled. You know, that doesn't sound half bad. I'll hold it for you then. Come by whenever you feel like making it official. It already is, she said softly. But thank you, Trevor. She hung up and looked out through the screen door. The tulips glowed in the last slant of sun, and for the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like hers again. From the sidewalk, Helen called, "What did he want?" Gloria's eyes stayed on the flowers as she answered, "Just confirmation." "Of what?" "That I'm done waiting for apologies." Helen grinned. "Then pour yourself a drink, darling. You've earned it." Gloria did just that. A small pour of sweet tea over ice. She sat back in her chair, the glass sweating in her palm, and listened to the cicadas begin their evening chorus. Her phone buzzed once more on the table. A notification from Facebook. She didn't look. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Thick paper, typed neatly, no return address. But Gloria didn't need one. She recognized the phrasing immediately. Family discussion requested. That was Danielle's handiwork if she'd ever seen it. Gloria laid it flat on the kitchen table, smoothing the creases with one careful palm. The sunlight slanted through the blinds, striping the letter like prison bars across the words. When she called Carla Jameson, her voice was steady. They've scheduled some kind of meeting. This Saturday. At that coffee shop downtown. On the other end, Carla exhaled, sharp and low. You don't need to go, Gloria. They'll only try to wear you down emotionally. That's the tactic. Gloria's gaze drifted to the tulips outside, still bright and unbothered by the latest storm. I figured as much. Let me guess, they're calling it a family conversation or reconciliation? Something like that, Gloria said, as if betrayal can be ironed out over cappuccinos. Carla chuckled dryly. Exactly. You stay home. Don't engage. You've already won the legal battle. Don't let them pull you back into the emotional one. Gloria smiled faintly. I wasn't planning to. After hanging up, she folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the junk drawer, where all things she didn't intend to deal with went to die. Then she tied on her apron, turned on the radio, and pulled out a bag of lemons from the fridge. If there was one thing Gloria Patterson had learned in 68 years, it was how to reclaim silence. She sifted flour, measured sugar, zested lemon peel into bright curls. The scent filled the house, citrus and butter mixing with the faint trace of old books that still lived in her furniture. Outside, the street hummed with normal life, a mail truck rumbling past, children calling to each other on bicycles. Helen showed up, as she often did, just as Gloria was sliding the tray of scones into the oven. I smelled baking from the porch, she said, slipping off her shoes. Figured either you were making something or you finally burned the place down. Lemon scones, Gloria said. Help yourself when they're done. Helen flopped into a chair, glasses perched on her nose, and unfolded the day's crossword. You going to that little peace summit they tried to organize? Gloria poured 2 cups of tea. No. Carla advised against it. Said they're trying to rattle me. Smart woman, that Carla. Helen grinned. I could have told you the same thing for free. The timer dinged. The scones came out golden, steam curling into the room. Gloria set them on the counter, the smell of lemon cutting through the lingering tension in her chest. Helen pointed at her mug. They can't handle you being calm. Drives people like that crazy. I'm beginning to see that, Gloria said, sitting opposite her. They don't know what to do when I stop reacting. Helen nodded, scribbling a word across the crossword. Exactly. Serenity is your sharpest weapon. They sat in companionable quiet, the kind only old friends can hold, broken now and then by the sound of pencil on paper or the clink of teaspoons. Outside, the afternoon softened, sunlight turning syrupy on the brick walkways. By dusk, Helen was gone, and the house was clean again. The kind of clean that smells like order, not erasure. Gloria washed the last teacup, dried her hands, and checked her phone out of habit. One new voicemail. She recognized the number instantly. Lucas. Her thumb hovered over the screen before she pressed play. His voice filled the room. Tight. Deliberate. The kind he used when trying to sound in control. "Mom, this isn't how families operate," he said. There was a pause. A shaky inhale. "You don't just erase people because you're angry. You're making things worse. For everyone. You can fix this if you just talk to me. Don't make me do something I can't take back." Gloria stood there, unmoving, the last of the sunlight catching the edges of her hair. His tone wasn't remorseful. It was a warning disguised as care. She'd heard it before, years ago, when he was a teenager, when consequences first started to find him. She didn't play it again. Instead, she pressed delete. The message vanished with a soft electronic chime, as simple as sweeping dust off a porch. Then she opened the back door and stepped outside. The evening air was cool, sweet, with honeysuckle. The tulips had closed for the night, their petals folded like prayer hands. Gloria whispered into the dark, "You already did something you can't take back, Lucas." From across the street, Helen's porch light flicked on, a small glow against the deepening blue. By Wednesday, the neighborhood had gone humid again, that early Kentucky heat that stuck to the air and made tempers shorter. Gloria Patterson spent the morning at her kitchen table with a notepad, pen, and a catalog from the hardware store spread open beside her. She circled 2 items: motion-activated lights and a doorbell camera. When the delivery arrived the next day, the driver whistled low at the heat and asked if she needed help installing them. She smiled politely and said she had it covered. But it wasn't really her who did the heavy lifting. By noon, Helen was on her porch, hands on her hips, barking instructions across the hedge. "The bracket's too low, Gloria. Raise it another inch unless you want it catching every raccoon that walks by." "Raccoons don't bother me," Gloria replied, screwing the fixture tighter. "It's the 2-legged ones I'm keeping an eye on." Helen grinned. "Amen to that." They finished before dinner, sweat on their foreheads but satisfaction in their movements. When Gloria flipped the switch and the motion light flashed across her front lawn, the brightness startled even her. "That ought to make them think twice," she murmured. "Or 3 times," Helen said. Inside, Gloria wiped her hands and sat at her desk to write a quick email to Carla. It wasn't a long one, just a summary of recent behavior, the uninvited visits, the late-night car idling down the block. Carla's reply came within the hour. "Already drafting a cease and desist. Let's draw a firm line." The next morning, Gloria opened the curtains to find a white sedan parked halfway down the street, engine running. She didn't squint to see who was inside. She didn't need to. Helen was already on her porch with her phone out, camera app open. "Got it," Helen called across the hedge, license plate and timestamp. Gloria smiled faintly. "You're wasted on retirement." Helen winked. "I'm a notary of observation, honey." By that evening, Carla confirmed she'd filed the formal notice. "They'll receive it tomorrow," she said over the phone. "No more drive-bys, no more contact, no more harassment. The paper trail will do the rest." Gloria thanked her, voice even. "I'm not afraid of him, Carla. I just want it documented." "That's exactly why you're winning," Carla replied. "You stay factual, not emotional. The law loves that." After the call, Gloria stood by her kitchen window, watching the motion light blink on and off as insects fluttered through its beam. There was something satisfying in the precision of it. the way light obeyed its own rules, unbothered by human drama. Her phone buzzed again that night. A text from Danielle. "You'll regret this." Gloria typed back slowly, deliberately. "I already regretted giving him my trust." She hit send and placed the phone face down, the faint hum of satisfaction rising in her chest. It was nearly dusk when headlights swept up her driveway. For a heartbeat, she tensed, but then she recognized the shape of the old sedan, the soft thud of a familiar car door. Trevor Lynn stood by the porch steps, envelope in hand, his usual work shirt damp at the collar. "Evening, Ms. Patterson," he said, smiling. "Didn't want this sitting in the mailroom over the weekend. Figured I'd deliver it myself." She took the envelope, her name printed clean across the front. Inside was the official embossed title. Weighty paper. Her name alone. No Lucas. No second line. Trevor tilted his head, studying her reaction. "It's a beautiful thing when paperwork tells the truth, isn't it?" Gloria nodded, tracing her fingers over the raised seal. "It's more than truth, Trevor. It's peace." "Well," he said, chuckling, "you earned it." As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Trevor." He paused. "Thank you for making sure it was done right." He gave her a gentle nod. "Always is." She closed the door behind him, the house now lit soft and golden in the coming twilight. The motion light outside flicked on once more, catching Trevor's car as it drove away. Her phone rang again. Carla. "Evening, Gloria. Just wanted to update you before I head home," Carla said. "Lucas tried to contest the title this afternoon. Dug up an old claim from when you added him in 2017. Gloria's heart didn't skip. It steadied. "And?" "It failed," Carla said. "The clerk rejected it on the spot. He has no standing. The system's locked. He's out." For the first time in days, Gloria allowed herself to exhale fully, the kind of breath that comes from knowing the storm has finally spent itself. "Good," she said softly. "You all right?" Carla asked. Gloria looked out at her front lawn. The camera's tiny red light blinked rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "I am now." Carla hesitated, then said, "You drew your line, Gloria. He can't cross it anymore." When she hung up, Gloria stood alone in her kitchen, listening to the steady hum of the refrigerator and the faint chirp of crickets outside. Through the window, the motion light flashed again, quick, sharp, illuminating the street where the white sedan had been the night before. But this time, the space was empty. By the time July rolled in, the tulips had withered, replaced by summer lilies and the smell of rain that never quite arrived. Gloria Patterson had started leaving her windows open again, trusting the neighborhood air to carry peace instead of tension. That peace lasted until Thursday morning. The knock came just after 10. 2 quick raps, hesitant but rehearsed. Gloria opened the door halfway, her reading glasses still perched low on her nose. A man in a polo shirt and jeans stood on her porch, hat in hand. He looked familiar in the vague way distant family always did. The shape of the eyes, the posture, that inherited unease. "Afternoon, Aunt Gloria," he said, forcing a polite smile. "It's Brad, Lucas's cousin." She didn't return the smile. "I remember." Brad shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I'm not here to start anything. He asked me to come by. Talk some sense into you. He's real upset. Says you're not listening." "I've done all the listening I'm going to do," Gloria said. "I know," Brad replied quickly. "I know, and I'm not taking sides. But he's family, you know? He says you're cutting him out of everything. That this whole thing's—" Gloria closed the door. Not hard, not loud, just firm enough to end the sentence he hadn't earned the right to finish. From behind the glass, she could see his silhouette linger for a few seconds before walking back down the steps. Outside, Helen's screen door creaked open. She leaned on her porch rail, phone raised. "Smile, Brad," she called sweetly. "You're on camera. Time-stamped, dated, and archived." Brad froze mid-step. "Helen, come on, I'm just leaving," she interrupted, snapping a photo as proof. "Tell your cousin we're running out of hard drive space." He muttered something inaudible, climbed into his truck, and pulled away. Helen crossed the yard, slipping through the gate. "Persistent little fool, isn't he?" Gloria nodded once. Desperation looks different on everyone. That evening, the sky burned orange over Chestnut Avenue. Gloria sat at her desk with a stack of folders spread neatly before her. Insurance papers, old bank statements, her existing will. She opened the latter, the ink faded but legible. Halfway down the page, she paused over the words, "To my son, Lucas Patterson." Her pen hovered above it, then drew a slow, steady line through the name. By the time the new draft was done, the beneficiaries list read differently: clean, simple, purposeful. All assets, including property, financial holdings, and personal effects, are to be transferred upon my passing to the Lexington Literacy Foundation. She sat back, rereading it. The weight that had followed her for months, maybe years, loosened, replaced by something closer to quiet resolve. When she called Carla the next morning, her tone was businesslike. "I need to file a new will. No family beneficiaries." There was a pause, then the sound of a smile in Carla's voice. "You've made up your mind?" "Completely." "Then I'll make sure there are no loopholes. Ironclad, just like the title." "You want me to notarize it in person?" "Yes," Gloria said. "Let's do this properly." They met that afternoon at Carla's office, the same narrow brick building that had once felt intimidating. This time, it felt like closure. The pen didn't tremble in Gloria's hand as she signed. Carla watched her, approvingly. "That's everything," Carla said. "Your estate's airtight. He can't challenge this without making a fool of himself. Again." Gloria smiled, small but real. "I'll drink to that." By the time she got home, Helen was on the porch again, phone camera ready. "Guess what I caught this time?" she said. "Lucas's car, circling the block. Twice. Slow, like he's trying not to be seen." Gloria's eyes hardened, but her voice stayed calm. "Send it to Carla." "Already did." Helen pocketed her phone. "You sure you're not scared?" Gloria shook her head. "Fear's just a thing they used to make me feel. I'm done renting space to it." As the sun dipped low, Gloria stood in her living room, framed title on one wall, her fresh signed will on the table. The golden hour light hit both, making them gleam. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret taking everything from him." Gloria stared at it, then deleted it without hesitation. Outside, the motion light blinked on. But this time it caught nothing human. Just a moth circling the glow, drawn to the very thing that could burn it. By late August, the cicadas had grown lazy, their evening song slower now, less desperate. The air carried the faint scent of ripening pears from the neighbor's yard. Gloria Patterson stood in her kitchen, apron dusted with flour, rolling out biscuit dough on the counter she'd refinished herself 20 years ago. She moved with unhurried grace, each motion deliberate. The house felt different these days, lighter, safer. The documents on her desk had been filed, stamped, notarized. The title, the will, the fund paperwork. All of it completed, all of it hers. Outside, folding tables were set up along her porch and front lawn. Helen had insisted on a proper celebration. The neighbors had brought flowers, casseroles, and mismatched chairs. Even the air seemed cooperative, cool enough for comfort, bright enough for cheer. When the clock struck 11, Gloria carried a tray of golden biscuits outside. "Don't let them cool," she said, setting them down beside the jars of her homemade strawberry preserves. The spread was simple but abundant. Scrambled eggs, fruit salad, pitchers of sweet tea sweating in the heat. Helen stood at the head of the table, glass raised. "If this isn't the prettiest sight on Chestnut Avenue, I'll eat my hat," she declared, earning a ripple of laughter from the crowd. Gloria smiled, brushing her hands on her apron. "I'm just glad everyone could come. I figured it was time to share a little good news." Helen arched an eyebrow. "Oh, this I gotta hear." Gloria took a moment to glance around. Familiar faces from the block, neighbors who'd watched her raise Lucas, who'd mowed her lawn when she was recovering from surgery, who'd seen her walk through storms and still show up with cookies at the book club. She folded her hands. "I've started something new. A literacy fund through the public library system. It'll support adult reading programs right here in Lexington. It's named after my late husband, Richard. He always said helping someone read was the best kind of inheritance." A soft murmur spread through the group. Surprise, then admiration. Someone clapped, then another. Helen grinned and raised her glass again. "To Gloria Patterson, proof that a strong woman doesn't just survive the storm. She plants flowers after it." Everyone echoed the toast. Glasses lifted. Sweet tea shimmered amber in the sunlight. Gloria's chest tightened. Not from sadness, but from something quieter. Relief, maybe. She thought of her younger self, the one who had scraped to pay a mortgage, who had added Lucas's name out of fear of being alone, who had once mistaken guilt for love. That woman had carried the burden. The one standing here had finally set it down. As the brunch wound down, children chased each other around the tables, laughter cutting through the air. Helen collected plates while the others lingered with second helpings of biscuits. That's when the hum of an engine broke through the chatter. Gloria didn't turn at first, but she felt it. That prickle at the base of the neck that only blood recognition can bring. The black SUV slowed in front of her house, Lucas behind the wheel, Danielle in the passenger seat, sunglasses hiding eyes that didn't need to be seen to be read. The conversation at the tables faltered, then stopped entirely. Even the cicadas seemed to hush. Helen was the first to move. She folded her arms, standing tall, expression unflinching. The rest of the neighbors followed her lead, silent, still. Lucas's car idled for several long seconds. The tinted window lowered halfway. His gaze swept across the crowd. The tables, the tea glasses, his mother standing at the center of it all, calm and unshaken. Gloria met his eyes, unblinking. No one waved. After a long pause, the window slid back up. The car rolled on, engine fading into the distance until the sound was gone entirely. Helen let out a breath and murmured, "Guess even snakes know when not to shed their skin in daylight." A few people chuckled nervously. Then conversation returned, soft and easy. The world righted itself. Gloria began collecting empty plates. "Let's get this cleaned up," she said, smiling faintly. "It's too fine a day to waste on ghosts." Inside, the house smelled of sugar and sunlight. Her phone buzzed on the counter, an email notification. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened it. From Carla Jameson. Subject: Final confirmation. Everything's recorded, locked, and airtight. Congratulations, Gloria. You're untouchable now. Gloria read it twice, then clicked her phone's screen dark. From the front porch, Helen's laughter drifted in again. Gloria smiled, placed the phone face down beside the tray of leftover biscuits, and looked around her home. Her shelves, her books, her framed title, gleaming in the afternoon light. It no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like peace. The day after the brunch, the house felt impossibly quiet. The laughter, the clinking of dishes, the hum of neighbors' chatter, all of it had faded, leaving only the stillness that follows a long exhale. Gloria Patterson stood in her living room, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a cardboard box open at her feet. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and summer dust. On the mantel, one last relic stared back at her, a framed photograph of Lucas at 10 years old, missing a front tooth, holding up a blue ribbon from the county spelling B. She could still hear his high-pitched giggle, his voice asking, "Did I spell it right, Mom?" For years, she'd flipped that photo face down during arguments, then turned it back up again when forgiveness softened her. Today, she didn't move it out of anger or nostalgia. Only purpose. Her fingers brushed the glass, leaving a faint smudge where her thumb rested. "You were a bright boy," she whispered, not to the picture but to the memory behind it. But brightness fades if it never learns warmth. She set the frame gently into the box, laying a folded dish towel beneath it to keep the glass from breaking. The sound it made, a soft click against cardboard, felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. One by one, she gathered the other remnants: an old baseball glove, his high school yearbook, a sweater he'd left in the closet years ago and never asked for. Each item went into the box without ceremony. Helen appeared in the doorway, her voice light but careful. "You sure about this, hun?" Gloria smiled, small but steady. "I'm sure. Things don't keep people together. They just keep you from moving forward." Helen nodded, pulling on a pair of gloves. "Then let's finish the job." They moved upstairs to the attic, the air thick and warm, sunlight filtering through the small round window at the end of the room. Dust motes drifted like lazy snowflakes. The old boards creaked under their feet. Helen lifted a lid off one of the storage bins. "Good grief, you've got Christmas decorations from the Nixon era." Gloria chuckled. "I like tradition." "Tradition's fine," Helen said, swiping her arm across a cobweb. "But clutter's just nostalgia with bad posture." They laughed softly, the kind of laughter that comes when two women have already weathered too much to pretend otherwise. By afternoon, the attic was half empty. Boxes labeled "Donate" lined the hallway. Gloria called the local shelter, arranging a pickup for the next morning. "Clothes, books, blankets," she told the woman on the phone. "Good condition, just no longer needed." When she hung up, Helen handed her a cold glass of sweet tea. "You're lighter already," she said. "I feel it." As they stepped onto the porch, a soft breeze drifted through the yard. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and distant rain. Down the street, a city truck pulled to a stop in front of Helen's place. A man in a reflective vest hopped out, carrying a box of small brown bags. Trevor Lynn waved from the curb. "Afternoon, Ms. Patterson." Gloria smiled, shading her eyes. "Trevor, what brings you around?" He lifted the box. "City Beautification Program. Thought of you when I saw your tulip beds out front. Brought you some bulbs. Late summer variety, gold and pink. They'll bloom right as the leaves start to turn." Helen leaned over the railing, teasing. "You bribing the neighborhood with flowers now, Trevor?" He grinned. "Only the ones who pay their taxes on time." Gloria laughed, taking the box from him. "Thank you. I'll find them a good spot." "You always do," he said. When he left, the house was bathed in the slow light of early evening. Gloria carried the box to the backyard, set it beside her garden gloves, and knelt in the soil. The ground was warm beneath her palms, alive with scent and texture. She worked in silence, planting each bulb with careful precision. Helen sat nearby on the porch steps, fanning herself with the newspaper. "You think he'll see what you've done someday?" Gloria pressed a final bulb into the earth, then leaned back on her heels. "Maybe. Maybe not. Doesn't matter." She dusted her hands and looked toward the horizon, where the sun slipped low over the neighborhood rooftops. The sky blushed orange and lavender, soft, forgiving colors. "I used to think legacy was about what people remembered," Gloria said quietly. Now I think it's about what grows after you stop tending it. Helen smiled. That's poetry, Gloria Patterson. Maybe, Gloria replied. Or maybe it's just truth. The two women sat in comfortable silence as crickets began their evening chorus. The air cooled, and the scent of earth rose sweet and deep. Gloria looked at the rows she'd just planted, small, perfect mounds in the fading light. Her palms were dirty, her heart quiet. Then she noticed it. A thin envelope propped against the porch rail. She hadn't seen it there before. No postage, no return address. Just one line, written in that familiar, uneven hand she'd once recognized instantly. If you won't give me what's mine, I'll take it. Gloria stood slowly, the twilight deepening around her. Helen caught her look and frowned. The letter sat on Gloria Patterson's kitchen counter all night, its single line carved into her mind like etching on glass. If you won't give me what's mine, I'll take it. By morning, she had made her choice. At 8 sharp, she called Carla. We're finalizing the will today, she said. Her tone was calm, almost gentle, the voice of a woman who'd stopped asking permission for peace. Carla's answer came without hesitation. I'll clear my schedule. The sky was overcast when Gloria pulled into the small brick parking lot downtown. A drizzle had started, the kind that coated the windshield without sound. She didn't bother with an umbrella. She liked the feeling of rain on her face. It reminded her she was alive, solid, untouchable. Inside, Carla's office smelled of old wood and fresh coffee. The hum of a ceiling fan filled the quiet. Papers were already laid out neatly on the conference table. The new will, notarization pages, final verification forms. Helen was there too, perched in the corner chair with a tote bag full of crossword books, watching with the kind of proud amusement that only lifelong friends can manage. Thought you might need a witness who won't faint, Helen said, smiling. Gloria hung her coat on the rack. You're just here for the gossip. True, Helen said, but also for moral support. Plus, someone's got to make sure you don't sign your name in blood. Carla laughed softly as she entered from the adjoining room, a stack of sealed folders in her hand. Morning, ladies. And don't worry, Helen, we're keeping everything strictly legal today. She sat across from Gloria, flipping the top page open. Everything's ready. The foundation board signed their side of the trust yesterday. Once you sign, the property and all associated assets transfer automatically to the Lexington Literacy Fund upon your passing. Lucas Patterson is formally and irrevocably excluded. No appeals, no loopholes, no revisions without 2 witnesses and an attorney's countersignature. Helen whistled. Sounds tighter than Fort Knox. That's the goal, Carla said, her gaze steady on Gloria. You ready? Gloria nodded, sliding her glasses into place. Her hands, those small, disciplined librarian's hands, didn't tremble. She signed each page with careful, deliberate strokes. When she finished, Carla added her own signature beside it and pressed the firm's gold seal onto the bottom corner. The sound, the thunk of permanence, echoed faintly through the room. Carla leaned back, smiling. That's it. You've taken back every inch of power he tried to steal. Helen reached over, giving Gloria's wrist a squeeze. And you did it without breaking a single window. I'd have needed at least one. Gloria chuckled. Violence is temporary. Paperwork lasts forever. They all laughed, the tension finally cracking like a window letting in air. Carla gathered the papers into a neat pile. I'll file this today. By Monday, it'll be part of the public record. No one touches it, no one alters it. You're completely free. Gloria's gaze drifted toward the rain streaking down the window. It feels strange, she said softly. Freedom. I spent so long fighting for it, I almost forgot what it sounded like. Helen smiled. It sounds like rain and fresh coffee. Carla's phone buzzed on the desk. She frowned, checking the screen. Excuse me a second. She stepped into the next room, closing the door behind her. Gloria and Helen exchanged a curious glance. When Carla returned a minute later, her expression had changed. Not alarmed, but sharpened, like someone recalculating a move in real time. That was the county registrar's office, she said slowly. They flagged an unusual alert tied to your property record. Gloria straightened. What kind of alert? Carla opened her tablet, scrolling quickly, eyes narrowing. Someone attempted to log into your title account this morning. Tried to submit a partial ownership claim under your name. Helen's hand froze mid-air. Under her name? Carla nodded grimly. They used your social security number, Gloria, but the IP address traced back to a different city. I've already asked them to send the file, but it looks like Lucas. For a moment, the room went utterly still. The rain outside intensified, tapping a rhythm against the glass. Gloria's voice, when it came, was low and steady. He tried to become me. Carla nodded once. Identity fraud. And he failed. The system caught the mismatch instantly. But it's on record now. Helen muttered. Lord above. Carla slid a document across the table, her tone crisp again. Don't worry, I've already notified the registrar and the police liaison. It's handled. He won't get near anything else of yours. Not legally, not financially, not digitally. It's done. Gloria exhaled through her nose, calm returning like a tide. Let him dig his own grave. I've done enough building for both of us. Helen leaned closer, pride softening her tone. You've done more than enough. You didn't just keep your house, you rebuilt your story. Carla smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how many people never get this far. You, Gloria, you're the exception. Gloria looked at the stack of signed papers, crisp, weighty, sealed. Then at her two allies. The women who had stood beside her as she carved a life out of loss. Exception or not, she said, standing. I'm finished letting other people write my endings. She reached for her umbrella but paused at the door. The rain had slowed, sunlight breaking through the clouds in thin golden lines that fell across the wet pavement. Carla gathered the file into her briefcase. I'll walk this straight to the courthouse myself. You won't even need to check the confirmation email. Gloria smiled. I trust you. As she opened the office door, a cool breeze swept in. Clean, rinsed, new. Helen held it open for her, whispering, He thought he could erase you. Gloria stepped into the light. He can't even spell my name right. They laughed, and the door swung shut behind them. That night, the rain returned, gentle, steady. Gloria sat at her kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, and the framed title gleaming on the wall beside her. The motion light flickered outside, briefly illuminating the street. Her phone buzzed once, an email from Carla. Subject: FYI. You were right. Lucas attempted to access your financial records as well. The authorities were notified. They've opened an investigation. Gloria read the message, then closed her laptop. Outside, thunder rolled low over Lexington, slow and deliberate. The sound of justice finding its way home. By the time spring rolled around again, Lexington had forgiven winter. The air was tender, the rain warm, and the streets smelled faintly of honeysuckle and wet mulch. Gloria Patterson's tulips, gold and pink, the ones Trevor had brought months earlier, stretched high in her front yard, full and proud. Every morning she sat on her porch with a cup of tea and watched them unfold like small, forgiving miracles. The white sedan hadn't been seen in months. The motion lights now blinked only for the wind and the occasional squirrel. Even the nights felt lighter. No hum of idling engines, no notes under doors. Whatever storms had shadowed her home had moved on. The story, however, had not. It started quietly, as most good things do. A reporter from the Lexington Herald called one morning, asking about her recent donation to the library system. Carla had filed the paperwork under the Richard Patterson Literacy Fund, and the local government had taken notice. "Mrs. Patterson," the woman on the phone said, her tone bright and earnest, "we'd love to feature you in our Sunday community section. It's not every day someone donates a property to fund adult education." Gloria smiled into her tea. "I appreciate that, but the house doesn't need its picture in the paper. The work will speak loud enough." The reporter persisted for a few minutes. Questions about her motivation, her late husband, her legacy. Gloria answered politely, never giving the soundbite the woman wanted. When the article finally appeared, the photo wasn't of Gloria at all. It was a wide shot of the library. The front doors open, sunlight spilling over a new brass plaque engraved with the words, "The Richard Patterson Literacy Fund." Helen clipped the article from the paper and laminated it herself. "You made front page of the community section," she crowed, waving it from her porch. "They even spelled your name right." Gloria laughed. "Maybe I'll frame it next to the title." "Lord, no," Helen said, setting down a pitcher of lemonade. "That title's war memorabilia. This one's peace." A few evenings later, Helen decided peace deserved a toast. She decorated her porch with strings of soft white lights, laid out deviled eggs, and invited every neighbor who'd ever watched Gloria's story unfold from across the picket fences. "Nothing fancy," she said, "just celebration disguised as gossip." The air buzzed with small talk and laughter, the kind that grows only where tension has finally died. The tulips along Gloria's yard glowed in the lamplight, bright as if they knew they'd been planted for this very moment. Trevor arrived with a small wooden frame. "For you," he said, handing it over. Inside was the clipped article, pressed and neat beneath glass. "In case you ever forget what you built." Gloria ran her fingers along the edges. "I won't. But thank you." Helen raised her glass of sweet tea. "To Gloria. For teaching the whole street that a woman doesn't have to shout to win. Sometimes all she's got to do is sign." Laughter followed, bright and full. The night stretched soft and long, the kind of night that didn't need anything more than company and the sound of crickets. Across the street, a new family moved into the rental where Lucas once parked his car. A young couple with a baby and a Labrador. They waved as they unloaded boxes. Helen leaned over to Gloria and whispered, "See? Nature hates a vacuum. Even bad memories get replaced if you give 'em room." Gloria smiled. "Then I suppose we've done our part." From then on, the street belonged again to the living. Lucas and Danielle had vanished from Lexington's gossip entirely. No more Facebook posts, no texts, no sightings. Carla had confirmed the fraud case was under review, but the noise surrounding it never reached Chestnut Avenue. The days melted into routine. Gloria tended her tulips, volunteered twice a week at the library, and spent lazy afternoons in her sunroom. The light there was perfect, filtered through lace curtains, warming her face as she napped with a book open on her lap. Sometimes Helen would knock softly and let herself in, leaving pie or crossword puzzles on the side table before tiptoeing out again. One afternoon, Gloria stirred awake to the sound of birdsong outside. The air smelled of soil and lilacs drifting through the open window. She stretched, the sunlight catching her silver hair, and for the first time in years, her hands didn't feel like they were holding something invisible and heavy. She glanced toward the living room, where the framed title hung gleaming in the afternoon light. Gloria Patterson, sole owner. The sight no longer filled her with defiance, only quiet gratitude. Her phone buzzed once on the side table, a news alert. She squinted at the screen, the headline catching her breath for a moment. "Local man arrested in multiple fraud investigations." Lexington authorities confirm ongoing federal review of identity theft claims tied to property disputes. She read no further. Her tea had gone cold, but she didn't mind. Gloria closed her eyes again, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly. The tulips, outside, swayed in the wind, their petals catching the light like small flames. Morning came slow and golden, the kind that filtered through lace curtains and made everything seem softer than it was. Gloria Patterson stood in her study, barefoot, the hum of the kettle faint in the distance. The air smelled faintly of paper, lemon oil, and tulips from the vase by the window. She had spent the early hours sorting through letters, thank you notes from the library's new reading volunteers, handwritten cards from adults who'd just finished their first novels cover to cover. One note, written in neat block letters, read, "Thank you for giving people like me a chance." Gloria set it aside with care, her throat tightening just a little. The framed title leaned against the wall, waiting. It wasn't the original. That one had been sealed in the Literacy Fund's file, but Trevor had made a perfect copy for her. Heavy parchment, gold embossed, her name standing alone in clean black print. She lifted it onto the nail above her desk, straightening it until it hung perfectly level. Sunlight caught the glass, spilling gold across her bookshelf and the floorboards beneath her feet. Then she uncapped a black marker. In deliberate, careful letters, she wrote along the bottom of the glass, "Earned, not inherited." Her handwriting was steady, the kind she used when cataloging books long ago. Small, even, impossible to misread. She stepped back, studying the words. They didn't feel like defiance anymore. They felt like truth. The kettle whistled in the kitchen. She turned it off, spooned chamomile leaves into her teapot, and let the steam rise like morning fog. When she poured herself a cup, the scent filled the room. Warm, floral, forgiving. On her desk, a single check lay waiting inside an envelope addressed to the Richard Patterson Reading Center. The amount was modest but meaningful. Gloria sealed it, pressed her thumb to the flap, and set it beside her outgoing mail. Outside, the wind rustled through the tulips, their petals shimmering like tiny embers in the afternoon light. The same wind that once carried storms now whispered through peace. The door creaked open. Helen stepped in without knocking. Crossword book under one arm, 2 mugs of sweet tea in her hands. "I know you like that herbal stuff," she said, "but I brought something with caffeine, just in case you plan to nap before beating me at the puzzle." Gloria smiled. "You don't need caffeine to lose, Helen." Oh, big talk from the woman who still thinks onomatopoeia is a word normal people spell correctly. "Librarian's advantage," Gloria said, motioning her toward the armchair by the window. They sat together, the crossword between them, pencils tapping in comfortable rhythm. Outside, the street was calm. Kids on bicycles, a mail truck easing down the block, sunlight sliding across the neat line of fences and gardens. Helen looked up, from the paper, studying her friend for a long moment. "You ever think about what it took to get here?" Gloria traced a finger around the rim of her cup. "Every day. But I don't stay there long." Helen nodded. "You shouldn't. You earned this peace." Gloria smiled faintly. "Peace isn't earned. It's protected." They finished the puzzle in silence, the quiet kind that only exists between people who've lived long enough to know words aren't always necessary. The afternoon stretched, lazy and golden. Helen eventually packed up her things, pressing a hand to Gloria's shoulder on her way out. "Don't stay up tonight alphabetizing your pantry again. You've done enough organizing for one lifetime." Gloria laughed softly. "No promises." When the door clicked shut, the house returned to its gentle stillness. The sun had shifted westward now, pouring long rays through the window. They caught the framed title perfectly, "Gloria Patterson, Sole Owner," and the line beneath it, bold and eternal. She stood for a while, watching dust dance through the light. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour. Gloria sipped the last of her tea, then carried her check to the mailbox. The street was quiet, the air rich with the smell of spring. The tulips nodded in the breeze as if they too were content to let go of what had come before. On her way back inside, she paused on the porch, looking down the road. The same long stretch where, a year ago, her son had tossed her suitcase into the mud and driven away. The memory didn't sting anymore. It was just a mile marker, proof of distance traveled. She closed her eyes and breathed deep. The world was warm, the air soft, her heart unburdened. Back inside, the golden light stretched across her study, glinting off the glass frame like a quiet victory. Gloria smiled to herself, the words forming as natural as breath. Not bitter, not triumphant, just final. They left me on the road. I left them behind. For good.